Hi, this is Catherine Dubberly, the Answer Lady. If you break the front foot on your knit carriage, it may still knit stockinette without a problem, but it's going to have some trouble with other functions. What'll we do about it? Let's ask Jack. This is a Studio 150 knitting machine, and it has a broken front foot. See, there's nothing right there. It should be like that right there. Without that piece in position, when you adjust the carriage to knit the needles back from hold, it fails to do so because this lever doesn't get in the right position. See, it flops too far forward. So I'm going to ask Jack to replace the foot on this carriage. Here is the whole thing.
Okay, we're going to change this foot for, this foot. And as usual, most things we've got to take the top cover off of the carriage. So we'll go over this one more time for you. It's not that hard. Put the handle in a relaxed position, and then we've got to remove the screws that hold the handle on. Alright, just like that. Okay. And there we go. We're back in here. Again, let's go over that one more time. See if you can focus in right there with the camera for me. Because what you see is this white dial has a spring tensioner that goes right there. That actually makes the dial click when it moves. And what we've got to do is reach in and depress that to get the dial to come up. And if memory serves me correctly, we start this one up, and then we've got to take the screws loose on the carriage because this one comes up with the carriage lid. That's one side. And the other side. Now, when we know we have the right screw, when we start loosening it up, and we see that our cover becomes loose. See, there's a number of screws it could have been, but we start to loosen them. We never take anything all the way out until we see exactly.
But since we know exactly which ones they are, it's this screw and the same one on the other side is all you have to take off to get this cover off the carriage.
To release the cover. And if the screw, as that one did, goes down into the cover, it's no big deal because the cover's coming off.
So we'll rescue those in a minute, right?
Right. And you will see the cover came off around that so that we can, and maybe we can show you
now you can see better.
Yeah, see, these are the spring fingers. Now, on some of our carriages, this has to come off before the cover comes off, and those springs right there have to be released from the inside.
But on this carriage, we do it in another order.
Right, and now it's easy because there we go. And if you'll notice, let me see if the camera can show you this post right here. And we have to line up the slot with the post. It's the same thing on the top dial. We line up the slot with the post. Alright, where's our little guy that tried to get away from us? You got him?
No, that's a handle screw.
Okay, here he is, right here. And there's a handle screw.
Okay, they're all there.
Right, and the screws we're going to remove are this one, this one, this one, and this one. And if you'll notice, this one's so loose because this is the broken area of that foot, which means that in a little while the screw would have come loose
and gotten lost
because nothing to hold on to it, it would have gotten inside here just like the other one that we were taking off. Now I want to show you a peculiar thing about these screws so that you can be aware of this before you attempt to make this change. Notice there's a little cutout spot on that screw. Can you see where my dental tool is touching it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a self-tapping screw. They all are to hold this on. There's this one. Let me see if I can give you a little different view right there. It's got a cutout on it so that the threads will bite down into the spot that they go in on here. There are no threads in this new foot. So when you put the screws in, they're going to have to cut their own threads down in here. Now this is particularly a point to remember, because if you don't get these screws started right, they won't cut their own threads down in there correctly.
So then your foot will never really seat correctly,
Well,
is that right?
Yeah, it is. It's not only will it not seat, lights, camera. It not only won't seat, but you see, if you started it, I'm going to exaggerate, at an angle, then it would go in at an angle, and then it's not going to sit smoothly against this metal face.
Oh, that won't be any good.
Right, now here's
Even though I just cleaned this, I see
I
some
know
fuzz already.
Well, that's one of the things about the Marble Mystery Oil is, you see there's a nice sheen on this.
Mm-hmm.
And what that's doing is two things. One, it's keeping all of these parts that need to move lubricated, and it's also keeping any rust or oxidation from getting on your metal. It just collects crud. And
it does, but you know, for us anyway, I think it's the right way to go, because we live in a very humid climate, and this is an elderly machine.
And, you know, it would be very reasonable to consider that your knitting room might not be the most dehumidified room in the house. So, and again, notice, let me see if I can get it clearly demonstrated, that there are some threads, hear it?
Yeah, I can hear them.
Yeah, in there that were cut by those screws, but in the new one, there are none.
Right.
To me, I can see the difference in the size of the holes. Let me see if we can hold it up and see if that's visible. Can you see what I'm saying? You're behind the camera.
I can see it with my eyes. I don't know if people will be able to see it, unless, of course, if you shift to a full screen view, it should be big enough to show it.
Yeah. But you'll see what we're doing though. And if you'll notice, your magnet stayed on your surface here.
Okay. Those magnets pop into these holes.
Right, and here's the alignment factor on your, while we're here. See, you've got a little post sticking up right there, and you've got a hole on your sinker plate.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's part of the alignment of your sinker plate, and these are going to line up right underneath that sinker plate. There's a hole in your magnet, and there's a little dimple where that sinker plate lines up on the other side. So put the hole over the dimple, and then you're ready to go. And here is our new hoofy. Get it all lined up, and then take it off so it's not lined up. What it's important to do is line up these holes underneath there. Let me see if I can get it turned around so the camera can watch me. But you want to line up the hole that the screw is going to go into.
And do we want to make sure before we start a screw that the one on the other end is also lined up?
Well, we're going to start one on this end. We're going to do the same thing on the other end, and we don't tighten up any screws till everybody's on board. But now, back the camera up just a little bit, and you'll see that the screw will start into that hole. Now, the screwdriver needs to stay straight up and down, so you've got to be real careful. What I do is use my left hand to balance this wobble while I'm pressing down with my right hand to start that screw into the hole. And you'll feel it when it starts to bite. It'll get a little harder to turn. Keep an even amount of pressure on it. You heard the screwdriver slip just then. That's where it starts to get a full bite and it gets difficult. And we're not seated yet. The first time you put these in is the hard time. Now you notice there's play in the foot.
Yes.
We're on a good flat surface. Try to get it so that any pressure that you put down, you're not stressing that new foot that you put on there.
Because that's where they tend to break.
That's where they break, right on the end.
Here, that's what could come off.
Right. and this is why, because look at where the screw goes in to the foot.
Yeah.
And that's your thin spot right there.
It's creating a weak spot, isn't
it?
it?
And so everything out here is acting like leverage against that one little spot that's retaining. And we'll hold this up so they can see that that's exactly where it broke, was where that screw hole was.
I have 2 carriages for this machine, and I've seen many others. This is always where they break. And I have dropped one and broken it. That's kind of a no-brainer why that would happen. It lands on this and it can't take the strain. But I've also had one just pop off in the middle of knitting.
Yep. Now here again I'm demonstrating the invaluable nature of our dental tool. I'm going to move this off center, and you see the tool won't go in. Now as we line up, watch. Oh boy. Sinks right into place. Then a couple of fingers will hold that while we get our screw in, and we'll go through that same procedure.
Of centering the screw?
Yeah, into the hole.
It looks to me like it needs to tip.
Yep, it does. Let's see. We'll go back through again. There we go. Let me turn it.
Yeah, do it where it's comfortable for you. I'll move the camera.
Well, no, I was going to do it where they can also see where our alignment is trying to.
That's pretty good. We can see well enough.
Okay, good. Yeah, this one's being a little hard, and that's good because I don't want it to look too easy.
Why would one be harder than the other?
Well, because now you're affixed over here.
Oh,
they're actually all hard, and this is an instance where any 5-year-old can do it with 20 years of practice.
How much hand strength does this take? Are ladies going to need to ask their husbands, or at least some of them?
No, I think you can do it. I really do, but it's gonna. Let me line this up where I can see it. Okay, we're a little off from end to end is what it is.
So you're putting pressure to get the end-to-end alignment?
Right, I'm actually pushing the foot to the other end. What we're going to try to do is loosen this a little bit, give us a little more play. But this is the problematic nature of this operation. You'd think, oh, it's only 4 screws. But since they've got to make a new spot for themselves, then it's not that easy.
That's the tricky part.
Yeah. Now what I did just now, and I'll show you once I get it started, I started my screw at an angle because the hole is slightly off center. When they make these pilot holes, they know that the screw's going to cut its own threads. And what I did was I started off at a little bit of an angle. I'm exaggerating with my screwdriver, but then
you levered it into position.
Yes, I straightened it up as I went, and I'll continue to try to straighten it as I go. Okay, we're started on 2. Now theoretically the next 2 are easy.
Let's hope.
They have a program at the university called Lunch in Theory, and I've often wanted to go just to see how can there be a theoretical lunch. I'm usually hungry around 12 o'clock. Maybe it's a practice in imagination.
Could be.
Okay, yeah, that's the right one. Now, I do have a tendency, and if you watch me at the shows, don't get alarmed, but I have a tendency to throw all the hardware in one corner and work back out of it, but I'm familiar with what they're supposed to look like.
So you're telling people that it might be good to label and separate their screws and not make a hardware pile?
I would do that, yes, until you're really familiar with what you're doing. When you take them out of a certain section, set them in a certain spot. Working on a piece of newspaper is real good for that, because you can actually take your marker and draw a circle and
President
say,
Obama's face has such and such,
that's
where
right.
Senator Feingold's face has.
That's right, you got it. But you can just write little notes on there to help yourself out.
Well, some of the people have their own expertise with hardware and have just not been into one of these, and those
That's
people
right.
won't have any problem.
I'm trying to see if your camera can catch this. Here's what I'm doing is I'm working against myself so that I know I'm not putting pressure on that foot.
Good thing.
Yeah, yeah. And you know when you're snug because it just takes the play out. And that's all you need with these, is just to take the play out. Let me see if I can turn again. But now I've got my hand where the heel of my hand is on the back side of the area here. So we're not.
We can see your fingertips, so we can figure out where your hand must
Not any
be.
pressure on the foot. And it does take quite a bit the first time. And anybody that thinks they're not up to it, just send it on.
Jack recently changed a foot on my brother 260 for me, and that is a completely different and much more difficult swap. So that one he decided not to allow me to film for you so as not to make trouble for anybody.
Yeah, that one was an example of the interconnectedness of everything. And of course we had a good time and we did it, but I don't think that's a homeowner job. Alrighty then.
So we're ready to reassemble the
We
carriage,
are,
right?
we are, and I'm going to point this out again. These are the screws that held our carriage top on. This plastic top, which you're not going to notice when you take it apart. That means that if you buy one of these plastic
So they
tops,
self-tapped as well,
that's
didn't
right.
they?
That's right. Now, this is
And
why
you can buy a replacement one of these, because I did for another machine.
This is why looking at your hardware is real important. If you see a self-tapping screw like that, and it's going into one of these soft material covers, you can cut bad threads where there were already threads cut. This tip is designed to cut no matter what you do. So what you've got to do is be extra careful in reassembling this, that you don't try to cut new threads where you already had a set of threads to begin with, and it's a very common problem.
Oops.
Yep, now I was going to say, we got to put this back on. Now,
Loosely.
yeah, here's my suggestion, and I'll show you one more time. There's 2 fingers right here on this spring
And now we
mechanism.
can see them. There's a space
Right.
in between them.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to spring this top one in and put the lid, the dial cover, only under the first one, not under the second one. It's got to go under both. Let me see how well I can line this up for the camera. See, it's got to go under both those springs. But if we only put it under the first one, right into that groove, it'll be up enough that we can slip that cover on.
Okay.
And too far back up, right there, just like that. Then this, oh boy, look at that. We done good that time. But yes, now that's going to be tricky. You just have to have some patience to force those fingers out of the way to let that down in there.
And when you say force, you mean gently.
Yeah, it's a spring. I'm going to turn it where I can see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's a spring, and you've got to spring it so it takes just enough tension.
And it's a pretty sturdy spring.
It is. You can hear it doing what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's that. Now we'll do the top dial.
Explain the positioning,
Oh,
because
yeah.
people may not have seen our other video.
Yeah. Well, this one's pretty simple because that slot has to match that tongue on that post. Did you see that?
Yes,
Okay.
we can see.
Now, what you can't see is inside of this dial is hollow. So when this post goes down in far enough, it'll rotate.
It spins freely.
Right. Now,
And the position on a studio is almost always past 10 to pop it on.
Right, right. But now on this one, you got to line that post up. Now, I'm going to stop part way down. See, it will not turn. Don't force it. As you go down, oh, there we go.
Yeah, you know when you're in the right position because
Right.
it clicks around in the normal way you're used to it clicking,
Right.
and you don't have to force
And
it.
you see it won't come up till we come back around to that lined up position. But let me point this out so you'll understand. These grooves are why there's two fingers on that spring that we saw. One of them rides here, and the other one rides on this lower piece of the dial.
Ah.
And I don't think it's down quite far enough. And so I'm gonna... Yeah, I guess it is. Okay, yeah, I see it now. I can see. You should be able to get the bare tip of your dental tool underneath it, but it should be all the way down. This white dial should be all the way down against the casing, and it's still not quite there yet. This is where the ladies need to have quite a grip to get that into place. Okay. And again, that feels better now.
All right.
Okay. And
Oh, look at my beautiful new feet, both of them. Now I can knit back from hold.
now you can. And speaking of hold, we just hold this cover in position. Again, loosely, because we want to use the threads that
That
screw
are already cut, right?
Right. And so, where before we were trying to use a little bit of pressure, now we're using almost no pressure at all.
We want it to find its
Yeah,
grooves.
right. You want it to find its own
And it
threads.
did. I could feel it come up under my
And
finger.
remember, we did not mark these screws left and right, and they're machined exactly the same, so it doesn't matter, but you definitely want to do it nice and gently so as not to... Oh, what happened? The lever stopped when it got to the foot.
Just as nature intended, or the machine designer.
Right, and again, we wiggle it around just a little bit. We hold it perfectly straight, and there it is. It found its threads.
Yay.
Then when we get down, we don't want to over-torque these. Some pieces you want to pull them just as tight as you can. These are not that way, because if you kept turning and kept torquing, it would actually cut its own threads off inside of it.
No, we don't want that.
Don't want that. Don't want that.
So now we just need our handle back, and we're good.
Yes, that would be it.
I am not sure what year these machines were first made, but the Studio 150 is an old model, so I was delighted to discover that we could still get parts through Needletech. Are those screws specific to the side?
No, not at all. These screws are...
There's your other.
Yeah, the magnets are good. These screws are specific in that you see that the tip for this screwdriver is recessed into the screw.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, over time, mistorquing with the screwdriver, and it rounds those pieces out. Then they're really hard to get out and get back in again. We have a repair technique for that. If it happens to you, let me know, and we'll go out in the shop with a hacksaw, and I'll show you how to take a hacksaw and make a cross-point screw head into a recessed flat-tip screw head, and then you can still use those same screws.
Are they replaceable if they become just ruined?
They should be. There's a number of companies that specialize in hardware, and now what you would find is that recessed head, now they use a Torx screwdriver, which is the little star 5-pointed, instead of the cross point, because they hold up better to repeated removal and replacement. So all you really want is the specific length of the shaft and the thread pitch. And you are ready
Voila.
to knit.
Thank you, sweetie.
That's all there is to it. It's not that hard. And if you have problems, just ask.